On today's episode of Behind the Brand, we're talking about why branding matters, especially when it comes to public perception. We recently teamed up with the Public Safety Foundation to help them rebrand after years of powerful community outreach led to serious growth. And because we're a small business ourselves, we know that growth can come with challenges, one of the biggest being when your brand identity can't keep up. Through our tried and true branding process, we help the foundation establish a fresh vision, a renewed mission, and a bold new look that tells the story of who they are today. Welcome to Behind the Brand, the podcast for small business owners, solopreneurs, and aspiring entrepreneurs who are ready to start strong, stand out, and stay bold. I'm Taylor.
I'm Kelly.
And I'm Isabella, and we're part of the powerhouse team of marketers at Moxie Creative.
We're taking you behind the scenes to explore what it takes to build and grow a memorable brand.
Ready to get behind the brand? Let's dive in. Hello, Moxieverse. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Brand. Taylor here, and I am joined today by Kelly and
Hello.
our wonderful guest, Jenifer Odette. Jenifer is the executive director at the Public Safety Foundation, and we're really excited to have her to sit down with us today to talk about the foundation, one, but also to talk about their recent rebrand that Moxie had the pleasure of helping them with. So welcome, Jenifer.
Thank you, and I'm excited to share, so yes.
Yes, it's going to be a great episode. I think that what the foundation is doing for our community and the community at large is a really special thing, and excited to help spread that mission through our little corner of the digital world. So before we dive deep into the rebrand and the foundation as a whole, I would really just love for you to share a little bit about who you are and why you're here, why you are part
How
of the
did you get here,
foundation.
Jenifer?
Yes.
Oh, God. I just had this conversation with somebody, and it's really funny how your journey just takes you in crazy places, right? Fast story, but I grew up in the wonderful town of Swanville. We were just talking about that, and a small little town that I had no idea that today I would be sitting here as an executive director for a public safety foundation. We avoided public safety growing up.
In the boonies.
Yeah, right. It was like, oh, the sheriff's in town, behave. I actually went to school to be a teacher. I ended up going back. I was just telling Kelly that I had gone back and taught in my hometown. So I'm a teacher and then coach, ended up coaching at St. Cloud State volleyball, assistant volleyball there for 13 years, which brought me to the St. Cloud community. At the time was prior to marriage, and we got married. I was living in Little Falls at that time and pregnant with our first. And I said, oh, we can't be living in Little Falls and have a baby and coaching volleyball. So we bought this cute little house across the river from the university, which we were never going to stay in. And our first is going to be 28 years old. So we're pretty embedded in the community, which has been great. And my career then took me just kind of all over the place. I worked at Midtown Fitness back when we had that, managed that, actually hired to fire. It was really kind of crazy, but it was fun for me because I got to go in and restructure. And then I told the main person, told her the next one to go should be me because it's all, everybody's in place. And she kind of looked at me funny, but well, it was a couple weeks, and then I was like, which was perfect because I needed to be. And then I ended up out at Brando Motors, which was, again, a very unique position. I talked with Joe and Gary, who were the owners, and I just told them to hire me to be their marketer, their networker. I would build friendships and a bridge between the outside world to the dealership. And it worked out because at that time, Chrysler really had a lot of money to do events and promotions, and so that's what I did. I made a lot of friends. I was in every organization, so I got to meet a lot of really good people and be involved in a lot of great organizations. And then from there, I ended up data marketing, and it was really interesting because every day I would walk into our building, and there was this little sign. It looked like a young person brand, and it reminded me of 3 little kids going to school. And I didn't know what it was. And I would see this sign every day. It came to a point where we were talking about the Public Safety Foundation, Greater St. Cloud Public Safety Foundation was the recipient of the Jacobs Financial Swing for Charities. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? What is that? Now, mind you, I was in everything. I knew everybody, but I had never heard of this foundation. And I'm like, what is that? And then it was, well, the Cop House. I'm like, okay, I've heard of the Cop House. which I should have known about the Cop House. It was by one of our rental properties. It's down by the university. Again, just kind of, okay, this is odd, right? I'm like, tell me more about this. Well, there were two of the people that worked at Data that were on the board, so that I'm learning more. I'm like, this is really cool. This is really interesting. Well, and those of you know Brian Myers, if something's interesting to somebody, he puts you right in place, right? So he's like, well, come on, you need to go to a board meeting because I'm going to be getting off and you should be joining. I'm like, okay. So that brand, that sign was the Public Safety Foundation, Greater St. Cloud Public Safety Foundation. See, I'm already switched.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that's what that is. So this little sign was telling me all the time.
Literally a sign.
It was a sign. And it's funny because before I got to Data, I was sitting on my Data blanket for 10 years at Brandel, and that was my next job. So I just kind of get led to where I go,
Sure.
right? So maybe that's it. I don't know.
Love
I went to the board meeting in October. I was officially on the board in January, and then in May, I'm the executive director. So
You move fast.
I move fast. But it was interesting because Sonia Gidwall, who was our executive director at the time, she wanted to retire. And so we had put it out there for people to apply, and there was lack of applications. It actually was a perfect time for me. It was in a perfect point of where it's at because our foundation was so solid, and where my love for workflow is where it's okay now, where does it need to go and how do we get more people involved, and let's
You like the
move,
challenge of it?
move it forward. And so that's basically how I got here. And so, like I say, it was a sign. It told me you need to be here. And I couldn't be more proud and more happy to be a part of this.
So that was May of 2024?
Correct.
Okay.
I have to think.
Yes.
Yeah, literally 1 year.
So how long are you going to stay here? Because you're kind of a mover and a shaker here.
Well, I am a mover and shaker. And it's interesting because with my consulting business, that's what I really talk about is workflow. And like I said, this timing is really, really good for me because our foundation is moving in a really strong direction. We just added 2 community outposts, and we really want to help and reach out to Central Minnesota first responders. So there's a lot of movement right now. And I told them, and I said, yes, I would love to take this position. I'm thinking probably 3 years. And so we did a 1-year contract. And then this last year when my contract, well, it was actually a half a year because May to and then when the contract came up in January, it was, okay, we're going to have you do a 2-year contract.
They're getting
that was a good sign.
Yeah.
And then my conversation yesterday with Ken was, well, we got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm not really sure how long this will be. But the fun part is I'll recognize.
Yeah. It
And-
seems like you're good at recognizing when it's time to move on and when it's
Yeah.
time to
That's
stay.
interesting
and-
because I don't.
Yeah, me either. Yeah. I'm all of a sudden like, oh gosh, shit's hitting the fan. Sorry, I swear on this podcast a few times.
Oh, good.
Like, red flags gotta go now, That's when I need to leave. But you seem like you find a very great opportunity to say,
She's
okay,
not
my
afraid
time is
to
coming
move
up.
on.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is there, of course, there's always
Yeah.
some fear and there's, just the uncertainty. But I don't know. When you say a challenge, I am anyone who truly knows me, I'm extremely competitive. I always let my kids win, silly games and stuff like that. But if it comes right down to it,
That's a volleyball.
Oh
and-
yeah, it's I'm extremely competitive, and I love people around. I'm a team person. I can't work by myself. I don't like that. I like to do things in a team atmosphere and work together. Right now, we just have a great board. We have great support with the community, and we have amazing first responders. So I'm just on this team that's just fantastic.
So
right
who knows
now.
how long you'll stay? Maybe you'll stay a
Yeah,
long
you
time.
just never know.
Yeah.
If we could just keep moving it forward, it's that standstill piece that I'm just like, oh.
But I don't
okay.
think you'll let it stand still. Well, we should talk about
Yeah.
what is the foundation.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get into. There's a lot of things that you're mentioning, like obviously we've gone through this rebrand, things that you're doing to move the foundation forward, and I want to get into all of that. But for me, when you came in and met with us February, March, I really did not know what the foundation was. And you clearly, when you were seeing the little picture outside, didn't know what the foundation was, but there were things that were happening that were interesting. From your standpoint, I'd love to just hear how you've taken the foundation is and we're doing, because what you're doing for the community is something really spectacular, and it's very different than a lot of the other nonprofits or organizations in the area.
Yeah, it truly is. It is its own unique piece, and it's extremely unique. And it's just really fun to understand how it came about and the thinking out of the box and recognizing that something needed to be different and people being open to something different and making a difference in our community. It came into a time in St. Cloud when we were having a huge influx of crime and drugs and just frustrations, especially in the south side down by campus area. And one of the police officers who had come from Racine, Wisconsin, who in Racine, they actually have these community outposts. This is where this all started. He brought it forward to our, at the time, Chief Blair, and had the conversation about, hey, this is what they're doing there. It's making a difference. And from that, just kind of in a nutshell, a group of community members, the chief and others went to visit Racine. They saw what they were doing. Racine suggested, if you're going to do something like this, start a foundation. The dollars can come through the foundation. You can run your programs. You can build your houses. You can, like, it's going to make a difference. However, you need your police department to be a part of this. And our police department was excited to try this and to do something different and to make a difference in our community. The money was raised. The drug house was taken down. A new home was built. And it literally is, if you haven't been there, it's a house. Like, we could turn around and sell that at any point and someone can move in and it's perfectly fine, right?
And what happens at the house?
At the house, we run youth activities out of there with our St. Cloud PD, the community outreach officers. There's a team of them that work out of there, and it's 6 of them. And they run great programs with the youth, because if the youth can understand what our public safety is and build relationships with them, and we as parents, if there's connections with the youth,
Positive role models.
positive role models, as parents, you're going to like them, correct? You
Yeah.
know, so you're building more relationships, and it just has overflowed. So we do the youth activities that are run out of their shop are fishing with a cop. They do soccer, basketball, Southside hoops, they call it, hockey, Women of Worth, which is a really cool program. They choose 9 young women every year to go through a year-long program and teaching them leadership skills.
And all this came about kind of, what year did this all start? Because it seems to me it started before all the George Floyd police things, which is really, I think, great insight. But how I kind of explain it, it just helps people maybe in those areas not to be afraid
Correct.
of public safety, to know that these are good people doing good things, because some people grow up being afraid of the cops.
They do, and you're right. We did start. 2017 is when the house opened, and so we had that stability already, and those connections, which really helped our community go through that difficult time.
Yes.
And then when you talk about the fear thing, I got goosebumps right this minute, because when I started, going there for the first time. And what they do in the summer is kind of fun, because they have ice cream Tuesdays. And it is not a thing about ice cream. Yes, the kids love their ice cream. They love to eat the ice cream. But it is about jumping on Officer Ryan Sayre and connecting and talking to the officers. And it's like as if they're just buddies and friends and older brothers or uncles and aunts, because it's both officers are both male and female that are working out of there. And it is just absolutely amazing to see. I just will sit back, and my smile and my heart is so big when I'm watching this and the interactions and the connections that are happening. And it's, like I said, when I grew up, it was, the sheriff's in town, we got to behave.
Yeah.
And this is, is Brian, they have a nickname for him, and I can't remember what it is right now, but, they're wanting to know, is Sergeant so-and-so here? Is he, what an awesome way to grow up.
Yeah.
And just
Right.
have that community, and you just feel safe and protected, and it's part of your life.
But it's also not, you're not just showing up for the communities, you're also showing up for the first responders. And it's not just police departments, it's firefighters, EMTs. And
Yes.
we
So
can talk a little bit more about that when we get into the rebrand, how we've framed that.
Mm-hmm.
But, what are some things, I guess, that the foundation is doing for...
Besides the cop house.
Yeah, besides the
Yeah,
cop house,
yeah.
like for
They
that.
kind of started that way, but
Well, then, so that was right. You had asked how it started. So that was the pillar. We know there's a need for more first responders, and it's not just police, it's fire, and it is EMS. And so we also have scholarships. So we have scholarship dollars that if you are going into becoming a first responder in any of the three entities, we have scholarship dollars that you can write for and be granted monies to help you get through your schooling. And then we just recently had Chief Love Dancing with the Stars. So we are now creating a scholarship for female first responders in police, fire, and EMS that are going into or currently a first responder who would like to elevate in whichever one they're serving in and in leadership manners. Chief Love is big on elevating and moving people through the ranks, which is really cool. So we're excited about that, to add that. And then our third, I call them pillars. So we have our community outposts, which we have 3 now, and then we have our scholarships, and then our third is supporting our first responders throughout central Minnesota, and that's where the rebrand really took a need.
so how do you support them? In which way?
Well, we do a variety of different things. We do have what's called fiscal hosts. So if a community is looking to maybe raise dollars for a piece of equipment or maybe a dog or a fire truck, there's so many different needs out there. We can help them to raise those dollars. And we also can do what is called the fiscal host, where we can hold those dollars for them. And so they're not sitting in a city coffer that can be used for something else. And then when they ready to use the dollars, then we write them back their check and they can have that. We used to, when we first started, we did conference.
Okay.
I obviously was not a part of this, so I have no idea, right? And then we've switched it to, in the fall, we do an awards dinner for our first responders, and they're all invited plus one
nice.
to come, and we celebrate them. And then there's also awards that are given out to different people and also departments that have done exceptional work. So those are different things that we do to help and support all
So
of
I
our
have a
first
question,
responders.
Yeah,
just a
ask
silly
your
question.
questions.
So, I mean, maybe a byproduct of all of this is maybe to encourage people to go into these fields. I mean, it can be stressful, and I think the mental health of the first responders is also a big part of this. But let's just say somebody's interested in these careers. I don't even know, where would you go to school to do any of this? I'm just unaware. Do you have, I mean, do some of these kids that love Sergeant Ryan, do they ever want to be a police officer and ask about that?
They do, and that, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
And there's actually I'll go back to the cop house.
Sure.
And it's been open since 2017, and just last summer the city gave or had money for 9 interns who have grown up into the cop house to be able to work at the cop house
I love
last
that.
summer.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah.
I know, it gets better. And then, so get ready for your goosebumps to really pop. So then 2 of them, more than 2 went off to college this last year, but 2 specifically went to college. And then this last winter we were having a conversation, and Sergeant Ryan informed us that 2 of them that had gone changed their majors and are now going into, one is going to be a police officer and actually wrote for a scholarship. So then we got to, he did receive the scholarship.
Yeah.
So now grew up in it, interned, went to school, changed his major. Now I'm going to go to be a police officer, and then hopefully will be hired here as
Yeah.
a police officer in St. Cloud.
Such a
Yeah,
full
yeah.
circle story.
Are we in need of police officers? I mean, it seems like people less
yes.
and less are going into those fields.
Less are going in, but what we sometimes forget about is we have a large amount. Well, we lost a lot of officers during the George Floyd. That was a
Retired.
lot of exited, but now we're looking at retirement. And so, yes, there is a huge need. And the same goes for fire and EMS.
Okay.
It's all of it. And it's really, the more you have these conversations with our first responders, it's a calling. It truly is a calling. And I don't know if sometimes people aren't aware of their callings.
Sure.
Because, you talked about Jen. I know when it's time for me to leave and move on. Sometimes it takes a little bit, and I won't say who this is, but I've actually been working with somebody currently that graduated from high school and extremely smart, but struggled. And then it was time, what do you do afterwards? And they were encouraged to just go try a lot of different things. And they did. They tried a lot of different things and nothing really stuck. And they're now 24 years old and still just like, I tossed it out there and just said, hey, would you ever consider fire or police? Because we really need them. Well, maybe. And then it was, okay, well, I'd be interested in talking about being a police officer. I said, okay, so guess what? I know people. I connected this young gentleman with chief of police. So now you're talking to the chief who sets you up with Don Chenik, who's the recruiter, who then sets you up with the ride along. Chief Oxton will say, either you're going to love it, or when you get done, you say, oh, that was nice. Thank you. I appreciate your service. And then again, if you love it, it's like, okay, I love this. Well, the ride along went extremely well. And then it was a conversation with Officer Ryan, who, and it was fun to hear him. He said, I went a little deep in the weeds with this person because I just said, how were you in school? And well, I kind of struggled. And he goes, well, good, because most police officers did. And so he just made him feel,
Belong, like he belonged.
Right. And then when he left, this young gentleman texted me and said, well, it looks like I'm going to be going to Alexandria.
Oh.
And so the plan is, and it looks like he'll be headed to Alexandria this fall.
Yeah,
so
they have a very big police program
They
there, correct?
do,
I have a few people
yeah.
that I went to high
So
school
how
with.
long
that
is that? Is that a
did
year?
that.
Is that 2 years?
2 years.
2
2 years. Yep.
Okay.
And then they do everything is done within the 2 years.
So you
and,
can
yeah.
do that on its own, right? But I had a nephew that always wanted to be a police officer, and then he went to NDSU, I think got a criminal justice degree, or a summer. He went and did
Yes.
it at Alexandria. So I think you can do that too, right? A degree and
Absolutely.
then
Yeah.
Yes. Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
And that is a path as well.
if you wanted the college experience or whatever. And now he is a police officer in Savage.
Nice. Yeah, because then
Big guy.
they do their drill or it's not called drill. It's
Whatever that
The-
the last part is.
Yeah, the training
actual-
teaches you how to use a taser properly.
yes, and all that fun stuff. Right.
You know,
Whatever
we
that
talk. It's interesting because we talk about the trades. More people need to go into
Yeah.
the trades, so we don't talk about first responders.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not
and
really
it's
talked about as
I-
careers.
yeah, I agree completely, and like we were talking before we even started recording, I'm from near Swanville or live there now, and that's always the conversation. And
Trades.
trades. My husband is a sprinkler fitter, and the trades have always been a huge part of my life. And so I'm always like, oh, if my son doesn't want to go to college, or my daughter too, whatever, that's fine. They can, there's these options. But I never really do think of
there is
first responder,
training
except
in college
my
for
5-year-old
those
does think he's going to be a firefighter, and maybe he will be. I don't know. So
Right.
well,
You'll
bring
take
him in.
him.
I'll introduce her to Chief.
It's not
Chief
too
Love.
young to
Oh,
start.
he would
No.
love that. He would love
No.
So now that's a good point too, because a lot of small towns have volunteer firemen.
Yes.
But some are career, right? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So, we are very fortunate here in St. Cloud. We have a full fire department, and they are paid fire departments.
It's a career.
Now, you just pop over to Sartell and
Yeah.
Sauk Rapids, and that's
volunteer.
Volunteer,
Yeah, my husband and I
paid
were just talking about
volunteer.
this the other day, actually.
so, people just assume. And then you go outskirts and you have even the smaller towns, and that they're all volunteer.
Right.
Right.
It would kind of be fun to take a little poll and say, hey, and I would say most people would think that Sartell is all paid.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. So it is paid volunteer, but you're still, well, let's just go out to Rockville. And it's kind of cracks me up a little bit because not really, but, and I say this wrong, but
Mollet.
they're the cabinet shop
Oh.
out there. There is the majority of people that work in Mollister. I don't say it right. I'm sorry. Mossalter. Yeah. See, it's kind of a mouthful, right? Kind of like that Greater
I
St.
would say
Cloud Public.
Massalter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They have a whole bunch of paid volunteer fired people at the cabinet shop. And okay, now there's a fire. You've
Oh,
got to shut
cabinet
down the
shop's
whole
closed.
Yeah.
cabinet shop, and everybody takes off and helps out their community. We don't think about these things
Yeah.
only when it necessarily, I shouldn't say we don't, but really.
Yes, and we kind of maybe, oh, that's cute, Colt. You'll never be a
Yeah.
firefighter. That's not a real job, but it is a real job.
Yeah, and
It is.
sitting here, I'm kind of like, oh, that's totally how I was feeling. Like, oh, he's just 5. Like, he thinks that that's cool. But, like, maybe he genuinely will grow up to be a firefighter. I don't know. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, I think him and I need to go visiting
yes,
the
maybe
fire
you
station.
do. Yes,
I would
that
love
would be.
You
that
should
would be
take him
very
to the
fun.
Children's Museum.
Yeah.
Start talking to him.
Absolutely love that. Okay. Well, as much as I love talking about the foundation, I want to go back on some of the pieces that we talked about. And so you had mentioned that the rebrand was a necessary thing because of your commitment to helping out the police, the fire departments, the EMS services, and the brand before wasn't translating to that's a huge part of what we do. So let's talk about the rebrand, why it was necessary, why it mattered for public perception, and maybe how some things have changed since you've done the rebrand.
Well, yes. Well, first of all, you guys did a kick-ass job.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It is really fun. Our brand was good. It served its purpose. What did someone say? It almost feels like we just grew up a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And very, very common. I mean, you start out with something, the organization grows. It's been 8 years. Time for a little
And I
refresh.
think
It happens all the time.
If we think about the Greater St. Cloud Public
Yeah.
Safety Foundation started, like you talked about, it was the cop house. That's what it was. And so when you look at the old branding, that does make sense. You know, you wanted it to be a welcoming place for the youth in the community. Like you said, you're like, it looked like a couple kids going off to school. And it did its job. But now
Yeah.
you've added on all these extra
the
layers and you're
organization
doing
matured,
so
so
much
the
more.
brand needed
Yeah.
to mature. That's
Yeah, I
very
love it.
common.
Yes.
Yes.
Time for a
And
rebrand.
yeah, definitely. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. That was a lot to say. Who are you? The Greater St. Cloud Public Safety Foundation.
Yes, because now you've dropped
yeah,
the Greater
yes.
St. Cloud. You're just the Public Safety
Public
Foundation.
Safety Foundation. Very just, because in all reality, it's not about us. It's about the work that we are able to help provide. The light shines on our first responders, which is just absolutely amazing.
And you're serving,
Our
I think when we
community.
think about the Greater St. Cloud, at least for me, I think it's, St. Cloud, it's
Mm-hmm.
Waite Park, it's Sartell, it's Sauk Rapids. That's kind of the greater, and you're serving so much.
Well, you don't want to be
more-
limited
right,
in your
you're
service
serving-
area. You
yeah.
don't know what the future holds,
Right,
So we
exactly.
don't want to limit the brand or limit the
Yeah.
name.
And that was really a big piece of it. And just to hear people's stories and their connections. And sometimes there was a little, it's all about St. Cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And it's,
People do get kind of ishy about that around here, and that's where the
Yeah.
great. Then we have to add another word,
Yeah.
greater or
Yeah.
area,
Yeah.
and then people still feel like they're So
excluded. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, we don't want that at all.
we're trying to include, and now
We
we
do.
have 5 names. Yeah.
Yes. So reduce and do more.
Right.
Yes.
Let's not get hung up on the name, people.
And then the other piece of it was, and I know when we talked, was it's not just our first responders, because we as public, they're always there when we need them, when we call them that little magical 911. But we need to be there for each other in all times, in good times and in bad. And in creating that community between, it's a first responder, we're public. I'm sorry, our first responders, they're people. They're real people. They're in our communities.
They're taken for granted.
Yes,
We expect
and-
them to be there. We need them.
Yeah.
But then look how they were treated during all that, the
Yeah.
police issues and things. We need to appreciate these people, is
Yeah.
what you're getting
Yeah,
at, I think.
right. And then when you had mentioned that helping the kids know that it's safe, they build the relationship, the friendships, and that's what we should have,
Yeah.
right? So being able to do that, it's just really fun. So it was really important that our logo embodied that. And I love how it looks like we're all holding hands.
Yep.
And it takes all of us, whether we are a first responder or are not, as community working together to really build a strong and healthy community. And we can do that.
Yeah.
So I thought it was spot on. You guys did a really good job.
Yeah.
Well, obviously with your input.
Good, yes.
Yeah, and Ken.
You listened? Yes, Ken had.
Yeah, it was a really awesome experience. And it was one of those things that kind of started out every time we do a brand, it's all about, trusting the process. And we say it to ourselves internally and we say it to our clients. And this one really was, because when you first came in, you sat down and it was kind of like, okay, it's going to start like this. And then as things went on, it was, maybe that's not quite right. And then it turned into where we are now. We always get there, but it really takes the full, time in the branding process to get to that end point, because throughout that time, we're asking you questions that maybe you haven't thought about, or, we're talking and things are hitting you and you're like, that's not quite right. That's not how we want to be perceived. And so it does take time to get there, but eventually you do, and it's always a great outcome.
Yeah, how was the reception of the new brand? Did people notice and the name? Or I feel like organizations and businesses change their name a lot and their logos. People, it's not as big a deal as we think. It's
Yeah.
like, oh no, it's going to be a big, But so I mean, people are used to a change, but also it can be positive too. So did you hear anything?
We did.
Okay.
So we were so excited to bring it back to our board. And again, it was, the board's decision that, yep, it's time. We need a refresh. So move this forward. And so it was very well received. We got a standing ovation, I believe. Yeah, and it was really fun because at the time we had a couple people that were on Zoom at the board meeting, and they were just like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And Bernie Perriman, one of them, she's so darn cute. She's like, oh, this just makes it so much easier when I'm standing in legislation to talk and to say Public Safety Foundation. And so we joke about that. But again, and I shouldn't say not. I mean, people knew of us, but it's been an easy transition, I think. And then we were so grateful that Chief Love chose to dance for our foundation.
Great time
it was
to showcase some
it
of
was
the-
perfect timing.
Yeah.
It was such a perfect timing. We were able to really just ride on that
Some brand awareness.
Brand
Yeah.
awareness.
So like you said, it was good timing for all around.
Yeah.
There's like good times to rebrand.
Yeah.
and
Yes.
Especially now you're just going to grow from it and
Really
working on your
are.
online presence and all those good things.
Yeah, which has
Yeah.
been great.
So
Yeah.
speaking of growth and new eras, what is next for the Public Safety Foundation?
Well, my goodness. So we just.
Where should I start?
Yeah, exactly. I know. I love it. My list is long. We actually just did ribbon cutting over a 1010 Park, and that is a community outpost. It's Sherburne County is also having huge presence there.
Where is that?
It is on the southeast side of St. Cloud.
Okay.
Literally 10th and 10th. And they did a remodel of the building that was on site. And so Sherburne County will be in their Central Care District 742. And then half of our team, our PD from the Legacy House, will be working over there. And that will be the same types of programs with the youth activities, but the Family Resource Center with Sherburne County being able
Yeah.
to be in there is huge because, Elk River is where the county office is. And this is the
Yeah,
biggest.
it's part of Sherburne County.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They're so excited. So we're really excited for that house. And then over here on the east side, well, we're on the west side right now, but jump across the river on the east side. And that is within Salem Lutheran Church. We're leasing part of that. It's an education wing that they had, and we did a remodel with that. And we're partnering with Centricare, Hospital Project Heal, and this actually will be under the entity of Project Heal. And it's the nurse and nurse practitioners from St. Ben's and St. John's are opening a clinic.
Okay.
Oh my
wow.
gosh.
Yes. And then we have our crisis resource police, which is the mental health unit that will be housed out of there as well. And so as partners with all of them, they'll be working together to really help give access to healthcare over in that area that is very deprived. And there's a lot of mental health issues in that area. So they'll just make a great team, and it's just going to be an extremely great resource for our community. And we do have a dog too. A therapy dog just joined. His name is River.
River.
Oh, perfect name.
Yeah, perfect.
I know,
response.
isn't that
Yeah.
cute? I
Yeah.
love it. And so, partnering, our partners are so important. District 742, now it just, the counties, we're working with Benton County, so hopefully that will
Wow,
forward
of
and be a
different
little bit in there.
things. You're not just doing the same
Yes.
thing, you're changing it. So what's Centricare going to do on the 1010? You mentioned that.
Well, they're in our Legacy House too. They actually
okay.
have hours in both of them. And we have a calendar. So people can go on, which we're working on our website. We need to work on that rebrand too. But there'll always be a calendar for each of the houses and lists all the services that are going to be
So
available.
kind of like a free clinic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
nice.
And there's
great.
dental that's out of the two, the Legacy House and with 1010, and hopefully eventually there will be over here at Salem too.
So I didn't know that.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So there's so
Lots
many
of
things
things
that-
happening.
Right?
So we were talking about this too, that yes, you're a service organization. You need to toot your horn a little bit,
Yeah.
right? It's so
Right.
hard. It's hard for us, our culture here in St. Cloud, but also your type of organization, you're just moving on to the next thing. And but we need to, I think just like us, we're like, wow, I didn't know that. And I feel like we're pretty informed.
Right.
I just don't think the public knows about what you're doing, and it's all awesome things.
Well, they're gonna.
You'll make sure that happens. You'll make sure that happens.
How do you get the word out in those communities? Do you think just word of mouth and
Boots on the ground.
Yes.
Boots on the ground,
Yes.
literally. They've been out taking surveys within the community, southeast side at this point. We've done surveys, and Festifall, they were out letting people
okay.
know what's going on. Community engagement,
Wow.
really getting out there.
I love it.
Just building those relationships. And the great part that we're excited about with the clinic is you have the different entities, and some people may not want an officer maybe coming to help them. So now we also have the EMS as part of that unit. We have the dog that can help in the clinic for people with the anxieties. And, there's just so many components that are just going to make this we don't know what it's going to look like. We really don't. When we talk about branding, we can't put our finger on what this clinic is going to turn out to be, but we all, and when I say all, we all sat down as partners yesterday and had this conversation. We all know it's going to move forward in a great way. But what it'll actually look like, it'll be fun to
fun to watch
develop.
it unfold.
I guess the community will decide.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the great part. It's not just St. Cloud. So this home could be in Uppsala.
Right.
It could be in Swanville. It could be, what town needs something like this?
Every town.
Right? But it's going to look different than the needs of South St. Cloud or the needs of East St. Cloud.
So you could see this expanding to other areas?
That's what we'd love to see. And again, by doing this, it's truly building that circle, because it takes your community plus your first responders plus your supporters. It takes all of us to make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you could replicate that model, hopefully, in the
Yeah.
future.
I have one more question that just came up. So at the top of us talking, you had said that this kind of started because of something that was happening in Racine, Wisconsin. Is the Public Safety Foundation now, are you feel like your group is paving the way, and other communities outside of Minnesota are now coming to you to say, what are you doing, and how can we emulate that back at our hometown?
Yeah, we've had people visiting often that are questioning and asking and curious on.
I love
and
that.
I know Hakima, who is our house, she takes care of the house, the legacy house. Hakima and Sergeant Ryan, they've done many seminars, speaking at different engagements and talking about the success of the house, which again now will be fun because we have the clinic to add to this. And so talking about branding, we got a lot of work to do to get that out there and bring the awareness.
Yeah.
And I, obviously, you can tell I like to talk about it. So I'm pretty sure I'll be doing some of that too.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. So I do have two final questions for you, and these are just really kind of wrap-up questions, and I had to phrase them a little bit differently because you are a different kind of client guest. So you've talked a lot about how you ended up here, and clearly I think this kind of mission-driven work is where you are supposed to be. So what kind of tips would you maybe share with someone who is looking into getting into a mission-driven position?
Well, I grew up in my little small community that I learned the importance of giving back at an extremely young age. My parents, just giving hearts. My dad was on the school board for 36 years and saw our school move through so many levels, which it's still standing today in one of the biggest scholarship givers out there. And my mom volunteered for everything. So
That's
it's
great
just,
role models for you.
I do. And my whole family is the same. And so I think it's a calling too, almost, because, it's just that passion. If something is extremely important and it touches my heart, and I've said a couple times I have goosebumps, I'll put in the work to make it work. And so you definitely, it can't be a surface thing. It's about the people, and really deeply about the people. And when you can give to the people and embrace them and enrich and bring us all together, we're all rich. And that's what drives me every day to get up. And I'm extremely proud of the work we are all doing.
It sounds like you're in the perfect position.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Perfect
I love
job
it.
for you.
Okay,
So-
last question. What is one piece of advice you've received, whether it be personally or professionally, that really stuck with you and you'd like to share with our listeners?
I would say this is from my dad. Dad always says, if you love what you do, you will never work a day in your life. I'm not working.
That's great. Are your parents still living?
My dad is. I just was visiting him this morning, and my mom passed about a year and a half. Awesome people. I'm very grateful for that. I get to go back to my little hometown this weekend and celebrate. And
I'll see you there.
Yeah, and you'll see me there.
4th of July celebration, summer
No,
festival.
it's Swanville Carnival. It's a big deal.
I love those small town little festivals.
It's whatever, a couple city blocks, and everything is just right there, and yeah,
The
it's fun.
300 population turns into
600?
thousands
No.
of people. Thousands of people.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
fun.
It's a big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big
Okay.
deal. Wonderful. Huge thank you to Jenifer for sharing your story about your life, how you came to the
Passion.
Public Safety Foundation, talking about the rebrand with us. It was so much fun working on that project with you and to see it all come to life. Rebrands aren't always about a facelift. They typically serve a deeper purpose, and that's why we love what we do so much. This rebrand helped reflect what the Public Safety Foundation has always been and where it's going to go. You know, you're building trust, doing all of this incredible neighborhood outreach, and working on these public safety interventions that go way beyond just the uniforms and what people can see. So really, you're doing an incredible job. The foundation is so lucky to have you, and we are lucky to know you and to have had the opportunity to work with you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I do just want to take 1 second and double thank you because you really, what I appreciated is when we sat down, again, you didn't know of our foundation and the questions that were asked and the time that you took and spoke with myself and Ken and Matthew, and we were able to really just share so much with you, and you listened so well, and it was fun. The revisions, we had 2, and we were there.
Yeah.
And that was really cool to watch it evolve. Had you not done your work, you listened, you went back, you did a lot of great thinking and working on it, and it goes well beyond just the visual itself. It's deeper, and even the colors and all aspects of it. So we thank you as the foundation for your work and partnering with us. Being in it is what I feel like. It wasn't just throw emails back and forth. We sat and communicated and shared, and we cried, and we had goosebumps, and that was cool.
It
That
is
was really cool. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
We're proud of it.
Yeah, we are too. Wonderful. Well, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Behind the Brand. We will see you next week for another episode.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Behind the Brand. If you like this episode, share it with a friend. If you didn't, share it with an enemy. To keep up with us, follow along on our socials. Links are in the show notes below.